The land says, come uphill. And water says, I will, but take it slow. A workman's ask, and nothing fancy. Will you? Here's an answer, engineered. A leisurely machine, a box of oak and stone, the mitred lock. The water's, yes. We're stopped. The bow bumps softly at the bottom gate and drifts. All water wants, all water ever wants is to fall. So we use the fall to lift us, make of water its own tool, as simple as a crowbar or a well-tied knot. Open up the paddles, let it dam and pucker, lift and with it lift us, like a bride, a kite, a wanted answer, breath no longer held, or like a boat. We're on our way and rising. Water rushes in like fools, these tonnages that slip across the sill, all dirty bottle green and gathering into a giddy hurl, then slower, slow, until it ends in glassy bulges, hints of aftermath, a cool and thorough spending. Wait, then, for the shudder in the gate, the backward drifting boat that tells you there and here are level and imbalance righted. Ask of water, help me rise, and water says, I will. What is this boat? The Book of Knots says, not a barge. That's for the Dutch and those marooned in Lincolnshire. Not a longboat, Vikings. Not a houseboat, Londoners, and all who think a boat aspires to the condition of a house. Names are signposts. This is not a dream catcher or moonlight prince, not halcyon, done working, water witch or sailing by. No airs and graces, nothing fancy. Narrow boat and on its way. So I'm here at Lowsonford in the lengthsman's cottage, and that made me think of Tom Rolt's great book Narrow Boat, which began the Great Canal Revival movement. And he talks about the Stratford Canal and about Lowsonford particularly. So I thought I'd give you a bit from the beginning of his book Narrow Boat and a few quotes about how he saw the canals. And right at the beginning he says, "Most people know no more of the canals than they do of the old green roads which the pack-horse trains once travelled." And he goes on to say, knowledge of them is confined to the narrow, hump-backed bridges which trap the incautious motorist, or to an occasional glimpse from the train of a ribbon of still water winding through the meadows to some unknown destination. And he talks about the appeal of slowness, which is something we've all learned about recently, I think. Travel on the canals, he says, seemed to me to fulfil in the fullest sense the meaning of travel, as opposed to a mere blind hurrying from place to place. And I felt certain that there could be no better way of approaching what is left to us of that older England of tradition, which is fast disappearing. To step down from some busy thoroughfare onto the quiet towpath of a canal, even in the heart of a town, is to step backward 100 years or more, and to see things in a different and perhaps more balanced perspective. And I think I had that in mind when I began to write my own canal memoir, which is work in progress. And here's a bit from the start of that. A canal is not a river. It is a purely artificial cut, perhaps fed by local rivers or by purpose-built reservoirs. It is made, usually by an army of poorly paid and poorly housed workers, to connect two great rivers or two mutually useful destinations, the Trent and Mersey, the Leeds and Liverpool, the Worcester and Birmingham. Each of these routes does what it says on the tin, and each of them has its own character. On the Trent and Mersey, the brick bridges are so low and tight that you can touch the arch of each one as your bridge passes underneath it. On the Stratford-upon-Avon Canal, the split bridges are tiny versions of Tower Bridge with a gap in the middle for the tow ropes of the horses, which are long gone. On the Weaver Navigation, the river current gentles your vessel past chemical works and weed beds towards the Anderton boat lift, which will carry you up to the canal proper. Sometimes, as on the Edstone Aqueduct in Warwickshire, your boat simply ignores the contours of the land and launches into the air in a cast iron trough that flies over the roads below and into the treetops. These channels together, the natural rivers, the purpose-built canals and the halfway house navigations, are our waterway system. It is a system built for a purpose. It is one of humankind's greatest achievements. It is a map within a map, a parallel country with its own landmarks and place names. We live on the other side of your map, and we navigate by different stars. Back to Rolt, who says this much better than I could. The canals have their own inns and their own shops, and because they follow their own independent, tortuous routes about England, often seeming purposely to avoid towns, the places whose names are household words to the boatman mean nothing to the landsman. And he talks about some of those curious place names, the places that mean something to boat people. Perhaps it was the names which appeared in the distance tables which fascinated me most and made the pages live. Sheepwash Staunch, Maids Morton Mill and Wainload, Honey Street, Rushy Lock, Free Warrens and Stoke Bardolph, Foxhangers, Sexton's Load, Offord Darcy and Withybed Green. These names had for me the power of poetry to conjure beauty in my imagination. Others stirred me no less by their oddity. Bumblehole Bridge, Pope's Corner and Nip Square, Pluck's Gutter, Stewpony Wharf and Blunder Lock, Old Man's Footbridge and Guthrum Gout, Bates Bite Sluice, Dog in a Doublet, 20 Pence Ferry and Totterdown. What a wealth of history and legend spoke here and clamoured to be explored. Tom Rolt talks about the canals that are in danger in his time of writing and how motivated he was to start looking after them, to start forming a lobby group to agitate for their repair. And that became the Inland Waterways Association. He formed it with Robert Aikman, and this canal, where we are today, was a part of that process. He says he knew of two canals that were in danger. The Kennet-on-Avon Canal from Reading, which crosses the Wiltshire Downs to Bath, and the Stratford-on-Avon Canal, which joins the Avon at Stratford by way of Lowsonford and Preston Bagot in Arden. If I did not take to the water soon, these, and perhaps many more, might be lost to me. And the Stratford Canal, where we are today, was in fact one of the earliest to be completely restored. The first big section of it was opened after restoration in 1964. I think it was completed 10 years later, and it's one of the most extraordinary, beautiful, super English waterways now that you can find anywhere in the United Kingdom and anywhere in the world. No one loves a motorway. No one drains their pint and says, I know you love the A1M, but still I say you cannot beat the Telford Ring Road for its engineering. The wheels on the bus go round and round, hands on the wheel, wheels on the road, the tarmac tightrope slung between two clouds. We know you've got somewhere to be. We're there already. We have caterpillared here, a long, thin village, inching up the hill for hours, resting in the plains. We do not know your city's name, but we can say it has a pub, which may be called the boat, the barge, the lock-in, anchor, or the navigation. There's a chip shop here, a chandlery for ropes and toilet fluids, which is closed on Wednesday, which is naturally the day that we arrived. And if you leave the towpath by Bridge 25 to take the dog walk Ginnell into the estate, the book says there's a supermarket, dentist and a hosiery museum. This much we know from Nicholson, the guide that draws our line across your map. Our book of days, which won't lie flat since it was fished out of the Trent, its glosses bleeding from the page into its spiral spine. The hand is mine. The notes say, shallow corner, take it wide. Avoid this pub, landlord extremely odd. And now, chandlery, closed on Wednesday. The book will be no help to me today. I am making a journey to say goodbye. Each Landmark Trust property has a book telling you about it, and this one, for Lengthsman's Cottage, tells us about the lengthsman in question, Ned Taylor, who lived here for most of his life. And there's a bench on the towpath with his name on it as well. And a lengthsman was one of the men who looked after a particular section of canal, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, and they knew everything about it. They knew when the locks needed repairing, they knew when the culverts were getting a bit dodgy, and they would either do that work or report back to make sure it got done. So this book tells us about Ned, who lived most of his 83 years in the cottage by the canal at Lowsonford. And his father was also born in the cottage. The family lived on rabbit most of the time, the smell of rabbit stew wafting down the towpath to meet them as they came home from school. Rose Taylor would show the girls how to gut chickens and rabbits on the kitchen table. The boys' job was plucking and skinning. At mealtimes, the parents sat with their backs to the range, the children round the table for Yorkshire puddings, spotted dick, or steamed puddings with jam or syrup to follow. When it was rice pudding, the children argued over who should get the crunchy top. So Ned lived here almost until the very end. And it says here he was a gentle character who came to personify this stretch of the canal and who spoke of his life with a quiet sense of fun. Places of deep history have a way of generating such people, grounded by the long roots that are so often missing in today's more transient patterns of life. Ned is buried in nearby Rowington, under a headstone organised by his niece Mary Fisher, which names him as Ted. Mary and her husband Roy kept an eye on Ned in his declining years, and it was a happy coincidence that they became the cottage's first landmark housekeeper and gardener. Another section from my work in progress. The working title is Boater, but it might not be called that when it comes out. And this is talking about one of the people that you meet only on the canals, really. It was in the bar of the Clock Warehouse that I first met Digger. He came in at about 10 o'clock on a surprisingly warm night in December, a huge man in a long waxed jacket with 4 sleek black Labradors at his heels. He sat heavily at a table and clicked his fingers. The dogs sat immediately like clockwork creatures and stayed stock still. They were young, fit and bright, shiny as coal and utterly obedient. Their owner had a silent dog whistle round his neck. He didn't take his coat off, even though he was sitting by the open fire. For no reason I can remember, someone in my group of friends began to talk about woodcock, and Digger sidled up to us. "Like woodcock, do you?" he said. He opened one side of his waxed coat like a flasher at a county show and displayed several feathered carcasses. Pigeons, woodcock, a few lumpy pockets with a long ear hanging out. This was Digger. Digger was a poacher. He was passing through on a ramshackle boat and staying in the local marina for a few nights like me. He left the pub before us. 10 minutes later, as we reached the marina gates, the 4 faithful Labradors came to fetch us. Like Lassie in the films, they had something to tell us. They bounded silently down to the water, pacing and circling at the end of a walkway between boats. There waist deep in the cold waters of a midwinter canal, was Digger, resting his elbows calmly on the pontoon as if still in the bar. "Fell in," he said, helpfully. Weighed down by his coat full of contraband and a thick jumper, he was stuck deep in the mud. It took 3 of us to haul him out. Every winter across the UK, 2 or 3 people drown in UK canals. Most are young men taking a shortcut back from the pub, who probably stop to relieve themselves, lose their balance, and find themselves helpless in the icy water. Digger survived, squelching stoically back to his boat with the immaculate dogs trotting behind him. He was lucky that it was the beginning of winter, not February or March, when the water has been chilling for months. Afterwards, he wanted to express his gratitude, and Digger expressed gratitude in the form of dead things. My boyfriend of that time lived on a tiny Springer boat the size of a large fridge freezer. 3 nights before Christmas, the boat lurched under the weight of a substantial visitor on the back deck. We threw open the narrow doors. There was Digger, clutching in one huge fist his Christmas gift. He thrust it towards us. It dangled, flaccid as an empty bagpipe. It was the body of a Canada goose. I am no friend to the Canada goose. To the non-boater, they may seem endearing, but when you have them outside your bedroom window playing the French horn at 3 o'clock in the morning, they lose their charm. They cover the towpaths with unbelievably copious excrement and hiss at anyone trying to get onto a boat. I would happily wish death on one. I was not, however, keen to eat one. They are vermin. They live on weeds and grass and snails. Shop-bought goose is rich and moist, but shop-bought goose is bred for tenderness and taste, even over-fatty sometimes. This floppy creature, spotted in a local field, honking stupidly at the water's edge until Digger hopped off a passing boat and shot it with an air rifle, would not be over-fatty. Not only was it wild and tough, but it had been culled in the dead of winter. Even weeds and grass and snails were in short supply. Looking at the drooping carcass, I saw too that Digger had not culled a plump young bird in the prime of its life, but the Wilfred Steptoe of the flock, a desiccated tribal elder. It was the waterways equivalent of roadkill. "Thanks, Digger," I said. "Brilliant," said the boyfriend. "We can have it for Christmas dinner." And so we did. There would be 5 friends at the feast, plus 1 border terrier. For 3 days, the goose hung from the tiller like a sad hot water bottle. On Christmas Day, I braced myself and got down to it with a grave sense of foreboding. I salted the saggy corpse and larded it with bacon. I basted it. I cooked it upside down to maximise what fat there was. I made a rich gravy to moisten it. Some hours later, I drew the roasting tin out of the oven and squinted at it. The carcass of a goose is a different shape to that of a chicken. "It looks like a toddler," said one of the gang. It did look like a toddler. I laid about it with a sharp knife, but it wasn't up to the task. "Bread knife, please," I said grimly. Someone passed me the bread knife. I hacked at the goose. It squeaked faintly as I carved, like polystyrene. It had the texture of the fibreboard used in flat-pack furniture. I served it up in large splinters onto the 5 plates and a dog bowl. It was vile. It tasted inevitably of weeds and grass and snails. The flesh had the texture of wet rope and much the same flavour. I couldn't eat it. Our friends couldn't eat it. Even the dog wouldn't eat it. We might as well have made a wardrobe out of it. Digger had taken the life of an innocent bird, and that afternoon it took its revenge. Later, after we had cobbled together a Christmas lunch of egg, chips and cooking whisky, Digger silently took the corpse outside and disposed of it. We did not ask what he had done with it. We never spoke of it again. City, Where do you keep your water and your bulrushers, your joggers, rent boys, babies in their Sunday pushchairs? All the things that cost so much to learn about your clay or cotton or your ruined foundries. Who's the guardian of your ducks? Never mind, we know. You're a dot on our system. Birmingham we'll take, but otherwise your cities turn their backs on us and we on them. What's a canal to you? An interruption to dry business, an obstacle that wants a bridge. To us, the road, the long, wet answer to the only question, where to today? The way on, the way through, the waterway.